So another nice warm one in the shop today. The old thermometer's hovering around 42. 108 the old scale. So what today's plan is, we're just giving the lathe a bit of a clean down in preparation for the job that we're going to do on the bearings inside the headstock. So I'll get the old floor cleaned up as well in case we drop anything. It's that warm the camera doesn't even want to focus. So, alright, I'll get everything cleaned up and bring you back. We also had a couple of new channel stickers show up from the USA. These are from Greg at My Little Mule channel. So yes, got a good little channel going there. So give them some support, and we'll get one of these stuck up on the board. So there you go, mate. You made it up to a little spare spot in the top corner of the board. And there's a few more down there. Yeah, so it's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and the old lathe, she's 32.3 degrees centigrade. So Fahrenheit is 90.4. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't do that with one hand holding the camera. So she's still a warm one. That's going to drop down to 40 degrees tomorrow. So yeah, she's still 42.5 degrees out there today. So they said in town it got to 43. Okay, so I've popped the end cover off the lathe. So what we have to do now is drop this banjo down and drain the oil out the headstock. While I'm at it, I'll remove the this gear here, because it will change this bearing as well. Yeah, this one's knackered as well. It feels a bit lumpy. So our oil drain is the Allen key there. So I'll go and get a container to put under it. I'll probably have to slip this banjo all the way off, in which case I've got to undo this. That's a bit shonky, 2 fat washers. Put him back in there so we don't lose it. See, that feels alright, the drive to the quick change gearbox. Still, we'll investigate that as well. So I'll go and get a drain container so we can pop this plug out and drop the oil. Okay, this one's full. Let me get a bigger container. I just set a rag down that can catch what's going to drain, what the tin will miss. Right, next step is to pop the cover off. Okay, it was just to seal it. A little bit of elastic sticking that down. Now, we can see from, was it about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we had this cover off and we put these magnets in. So let's take a closer look and see if they've been collecting any debris. This one here is good. This one here's got something on it. A little chunk of something there. I don't know what that is. Let me get a better picture of that. Okay, it's a little shiny piece. It's a chip off the magnet, because it is magnetic, so that's fine. Okay, coming to the other magnets. No, they're fine. So what they do, there's an oil port right here, and this is where the oil runs down to the headstock bearings. So, no, that's good, it's all nice and clean there this time. And when I cleaned it out last time, they were all full of shit. Okay, so these shafts here are the ones that we're interested in. I'm hoping we can get it out without having to pull the spindle out. But it is what it is. We'll see how we go. So we'll the input drive pulley, we've got to pull that off next. This lump of Delrin, or whatever it is in the end of the spindle, that's just bashed in there with a hole in it. I was machining some long skinny bars, and I don't as yet have a spider set up on the back, which is one of those things we'll get to one day. Now let me get a puller onto this. We'll try with a couple of bars first. If that fails, we'll get a puller. Just put the nut on a couple of threads just in case it pops. No, that's not going to come easy. Be very careful pulling on cast iron pulleys with pry bars. I'll go and get a proper puller, and also get rid of our oil before I knock it arse over tit and it goes all over the floor. So this is our puller setup. So we use our bearing separators around the pulley. Just got a spacer and our bridge and our hydraulic pulley unit. These are actually filled with grease. This is it's a Sykes Pickavant unit. It's an old English one. They work very well. So you wind this little handle in, and this piston comes out the end and pulls your pulley off. Okay, we've run out of travel. It's moving. We'll just realign it. Actually, before we do that, I'll just get a skinnier spacer. The space is going to be a bit too fat to go over there, but we're nearly there. Okay, we've replaced our spacer with a bolt, so that will allow the pulley to come clear at the end of the shaft. There we have it. And the keyway. So these puller setups are the only way you should be dealing with this sort of stuff. Otherwise you'll start doing damage, and that's when you start breaking things. You got to have the right gear for the job. Okay, looking at this, I might leave these, well, try and leave these selectors in place, purely because there's a threaded hole there with a, looks like it's supposed to have a locking grub screw in. That isn't in there. There's a roll pin there. Roll pin there. That looks like a snapped off bolt in there. So what I'm thinking, I should be able to get the circlip out of the groove. If I get it on this, or get the circlip over here, and we'll pop this cover plate off, see if we can't pull that shaft out. There is a retainer, well, a cap at the front, which is that one there, but to pull that cap out I've got to pull the splash guard off. So we'll have a crack at moving that circlip to the right and pulling this cover off first, I think. Possibly got a step on it. Okay, I'll get that circuit moved and we'll get a drift in. We'll give the shaft a bit of a tap and it may just budge that cover. Okay, that's got it out of the groove. We'll just get it along a bit further. Okay, we're there. So I'll get a drift. We'll just give this a light tap in an angled fashion down there. Just see what happens. Get that gear out of the way. And right there is the end of the bearing. We'll give that a bit of a tap. Okay, so that was our cover plate. Yep, that's our cover plate, landed on the floor. was hoping there was a threaded hole on the end of that, but there's not, so we'll give that a few more whacks and see what happens. Okay, something's moving. I'm going to have to get a thinner drift now because I don't want to damage the housing, so I'll get something a bit thinner. Okay, we turn the end of our punch down in the south bend and just put it in a vise, give it a bend, and now we can hit straight directly onto the bearing. So as you can see there, it's on its way out. Okay, we have our bearing out. Well, one of them. Okay, so it's just a common 6204 bearing made in Taiwan. Feels very grumbly. So this would be the main source of our noise, I think. Now, we still have to get the bearing out the opposite end. So there's two options. First, well, one option, we can drill a tap a hole in the end of that and pull it with a puller bolt, or I think I'll take the other option. Should be able to just slacken off these screws, just push the splash guard over. That will get us access to this cap, which already has a threaded hole in. We should be able to pull this cap out and tap the shaft through. Now, this is where we have to be careful that if this bearing is larger than the one that we've taken out the other end, that means the shaft has to come out this way towards us. So we won't know till we pull this cover off, get that cap out. Okay, looks like a 8mm thread, so I've got a bolt, small slide hammer setup. Screw that in. May just have an O-ring or some sealant around holding it in place. It shouldn't be tight. There she is, just has an O-ring. Okay, looking at the bearing, there's a circlip in there as well, and I can see the number on the bearing. It's a 6204, which is the same as the other bearing. So what I'm going to try and do is tap the shaft and bearing through. Well, I want to tap the shaft. I really want the bearing to stay where it is. So let me get something set up. The reason for that is if the bearing comes out of the housing and is still attached to the shaft, it's going to make it a real nightmare to slip the gears off the shaft. Luck's on my side, the bearing's staying there and the shaft's moving. That's exactly what we want. Okay, we're through. Okay, this circlip just here, we need to slide that all the way up as far as we can to that gear. That should allow the shaft to come out to the left. Oh, by the way, I'm using internal circlip pliers because my other ones are in my ute. So it makes it difficult. It's out of the groove, so we can just slide this with a screwdriver. Okay, so we can pull that shaft through now. Grab the circlip, which is that one there. Pull the shaft completely out, lay it on the bench. Now this gear cluster can come out. So, lay it on the bench. The other gear cluster can come out. Lay it on the bench as well. Okay. Now we've got this other bearing, which is this one here, where the finger is. Okay, so we've got to tap that out towards the front of the lathe. Now, I see now why that didn't move, because the edge of the bearing is just hitting on the on this gear here, so the gear prevented the bearing coming with it, which is a good thing. We'll just tap this bearing out. So I'll get a better drift, something I can hit straight. Let's put it through that way. That's come solid. So we remember that circlip that we had here. So I'll just tap it back the other way and we'll pull that circlip out. Just trying to rotate it around because the lathe chuck's in the way. There we go, that's that one out. So now I can tap that bearing out. I don't want it to come crashing down and dent my lathe bed, so I'll just put a bit of timber there. Okay, so this one here, there's a bit of something in it, but it could have just been something off my punch, but it feels a lot better than that other one that we took out. So yeah, the first bearing we took out up the other end, that was our noisy bearing. Okay, that's what we've dissected out of it so far. Now what I would like to do, the input shaft. This feels very tight considering it's just on 2 ball bearings, so we'll slip this input shaft out and be silly not to do these bearings as well. There is another underneath down the bottom. There's another set of bearings there, and they are for the drive, the output drive from the headstock to the quick change gearbox, so we'll probably do those as well. So it's looking like we can leave our, or so far leave our spindle intact, which is a good thing. We may just look at doing a bearing adjustment, or checking to see if it needs a bearing adjustment on that one, which will be just under this cover here. I'm guessing there's just a couple of lock nuts or so, because it's running on 2 taper roller bearings. Okay, so we're going to have to pull this cover off here and get this other shaft out.